I came home for Christmas after they took my college fund to pay for my sister. Emma had always been second. Second in the eyes of her parents, second to her sister, Olivia, the golden child. From the time they were young, Emma had been the responsible one, the hard worker, the quiet achiever. She studied late into the nights while Olivia flitted between fleeting interests and disastrous relationship. Emma planned for her future while Olivia demanded attention, always needing to be rescued from her latest mistake. And their parents? They had always been there for Olivia. It had been subtle at first, small things that Emma could ignore. When Olivia was struggling in school, their parents dropped everything to help her, while Emma's straight-A report cards were met with nothing more than a passing nod. When Olivia impulsively got married at 19 and divorced at 20, their mother consoled her, saying, "It happens. You're young." When Emma graduated at the top of her class, they barely showed up for the ceremony. Emma should have known. She should have seen it coming. The betrayal didn't come in the form of harsh words or outright favoritism. It came in silence. It came in the form of stolen dreams. Emma had a plan, a dream she had worked toward for years. College wasn't just a goal, it was her escape. Their grandmother had known this. Before passing away, she had set aside a fund specifically for Emma's education, ensuring that at least one person in the family had a chance at stability. It was supposed to be safe, untouchable. Until Olivia needed it. Emma found out the truth in the worst possible way. A casual conversation, a stray comment from a relative, something about Olivia's beautiful third wedding, the venue, the catering, the dress. So elegant, someone had gushed. "How lucky that your parents could help out." Emma froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. Help out? The college fund. She confronted them that night. Her mother barely looked up from the laundry. "You don't understand," she said with that usual tired sigh, as if Emma was the unreasonable one. "Olivia needed us." Emma felt something inside her crack. "So did I," she whispered, her voice shaking. "That money wasn't for her wedding. It was for my future." Her father, always quiet, didn't even meet her eyes. "You'll figure it out," he muttered. Emma had never felt rage like this before. Not when Olivia had blamed her for things she didn't do. Not when her parents had overlooked every single one of her achievements. Not even when they had forced her to take care of Olivia's messes. This was something else entirely. Did Olivia even know? Emma's voice wavered, though she already knew the answer. Her mother's silence was enough. Of course Olivia knew. She had known and taken it anyway. Emma had no more words left. No pleas, no desperate attempts to make them see reason. There was nothing left to say. That was the night she packed her things. She didn't cry, not until she was out of that house, until the cold air hit her and reminded her that she had nothing. No money, no backup plan, no home. They had taken everything from her. But there was one person who had never turned her back on Emma. Aunt Karen. The black sheep of the family, the one who had distanced herself years ago, never quite fitting into the mold that Emma's parents had created. Karen didn't ask questions when Emma showed up at her door, her hands trembling as she clutched her single bag of belongings. She didn't demand explanations or try to justify what had happened. She simply opened the door and let Emma in. Emma worked harder than she ever had before. She took on jobs that drained every ounce of her energy, working late nights and early mornings just to keep herself afloat. College wasn't easy, not when she had to do it on her own. She walked past students who didn't know what it was like to scrape together rent money, who had families that actually supported them. She pushed down the bitterness, and she succeeded. The years passed. She built a life that was hers and hers alone. No one could take it from her this time. She became an investment analyst, the kind of person who understood money, who would never be tricked into believing something was safe when it wasn't. She had learned that lesson too well. And then there was Ethan. Steady, kind, everything that her family wasn't. He saw her, not as a shadow of someone else, not as second place. He saw her, and that was enough. Emma had built something out of the ashes they had left her in, and she would never let them take it from her again. Christmas Eve was supposed to be peaceful. Emma and Ethan had planned a quiet evening at Aunt Karen's house, a small gathering with warm food, laughter, and the comfort of knowing that the people in that room were the only family she needed. Then the knock came. Emma almost didn't answer. Aunt Karen was in the kitchen, and Ethan was helping set the table. It wasn't until the knocking grew more insistent, loud, forceful, impatient, that she finally moved to open the door. And there they were. Her parents. Emma froze, gripping the doorknob so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her mother was smiling, her father standing slightly behind her, hands shoved into his coat pockets. They looked the same, older perhaps, but still carrying that same air of expectation, as if she was supposed to be grateful they were here. Emma, Her mother breathed, eyes wide with fake emotion. Oh, sweetheart, look at you. Emma didn't move. 8 years. 8 years of silence. 8 years of being nothing to them, and now, here they were. Are you just going to stand there? Her mother laughed awkwardly. It's Christmas, darling. We wanted to see you. Emma's body felt like ice. Aunt Karen appeared in the hallway, her expression immediately darkening. What are you doing here? Her mother let out a small, wounded gasp. Karen, we didn't come here to fight. It's the holidays? Emma knew better. But before she could slam the door in their faces, her father spoke for the first time. Emma, we need to talk. The words made her skin crawl. Of course they did. It had never been about her. Ethan, sensing something was wrong, stepped beside her, his presence grounding. We're in the middle of Christmas dinner, he said firmly. This isn't a good time. Oh, come on, her mother sighed, rolling her eyes. We didn't come all this way just to be turned away at the door. Emma inhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay calm. You came uninvited? Her mother blinked, feigning surprise. Emma, we're family. We don't need an invitation. Aunt Karen let out a bitter laugh. Funny. You sure acted like she wasn't family for the last 8 years. Her mother's smile faltered, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of irritation. There it was, the real reason they were here. The act was slipping already. I suppose we all made mistakes, her mother said carefully. We should move past them. Emma almost laughed. Move past them? As if they hadn't stolen her future? As if they hadn't thrown her aside the moment Olivia needed something? She wasn't going to do this. She wasn't going to stand here and let them rewrite history. But then her mother gave a dramatic sigh, tilting her head as if she were about to share some tragic news. Look, there's something we need to tell you. And there it was. Olivia is getting divorced again, she said, voice dripping with forced sorrow. It's been very hard on her and… Emma didn't let her finish. I don't care. Her mother flinched as if she had been slapped. Emma, don't be cruel. She's struggling. She's always struggling, Emma snapped. And you always expect me to clean up the mess. Her father cleared his throat, stepping forward as if to play the voice of reason. It's not just Olivia, he said carefully. It's the kids. Emma stiffened. We need you to take them in, her mother said quickly, as if rushing to get it out before Emma could refuse. Just for a little while. Just until Olivia gets back on her feet. Ethan let out a sharp breath beside her, his body tensing. Emma almost laughed. Are you serious? Her mother's face softened, as if she actually thought she could manipulate Emma into this. Emma, you've done so well for yourself. You have a stable home, a good life. The children need that right now. Emma clenched her jaw. You mean the life I built after you stole everything from me? Her mother's smile wavered. Emma, don't bring up the past. Because it's inconvenient for you? Silence. Aunt Karen folded her arms, stepping beside Emma. Unbelievable. You really think she owes you this? Her mother's eyes darted toward Ethan now, searching for an ally. Ethan, please. You're a good man. You understand responsibility. We're just asking for a little help. Ethan's expression was unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. You're asking Emma to take care of the children of the sister who helped steal her future. Her mother bristled. They're innocent. So was Emma, Ethan said flatly. Another silence. Emma exhaled slowly, looking at the people who had abandoned her. No. Her mother's face twisted, frustration replacing her forced concern. Emma, you're being unreasonable. Emma met her gaze, unflinching. No. And if you don't leave, I'll call the police. Her father stiffened, his jaw tightening, but her mother was already shaking her head, looking at her as if she were the cruel one. I can't believe this, she whispered, her voice shaking. After everything… Emma slammed the door in their faces. For the first time in years, she felt free. Emma stood frozen in the hallway, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The nerve. The absolute audacity. After 8 years of silence, after everything they had done, her parents had shown up, not to apologize, not to make things right, but to dump Olivia's responsibilities on her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if she owed them something. And then Olivia arrived. Emma hadn't even noticed her car pulling up, but there she was, stepping out of the back seat with an air of complete self-importance. She barely spared Emma a glance before adjusting her coat and ushering 2 small children forward. Come on, kids, she said sweetly. Let's go meet Aunt Emma and Uncle Ethan. Emma's stomach twisted. Aunt Emma and Uncle Ethan. Like this had already been decided. Like they had no choice. The 2 children, a boy and a girl, clung to Olivia's coat, looking up at Emma with wide, unfamiliar eyes. They were young, maybe 5 and 3, but Emma barely processed them because Olivia was already talking, already acting as if this was some casual favor. "This is perfect," Olivia said brightly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Honestly, I was worried for nothing. You guys have such a big house, stable jobs. It just makes sense." Emma's pulse pounded in her ears. She turned her gaze to Ethan, who had stepped closer to her, jaw tight, arms crossed. She knew that look. He was barely restraining his anger. Emma's mother, as if sensing tension, cleared her throat. "Why don't we all sit down?" But Emma didn't move. Her entire body was rigid, her breath coming out in slow, measured inhales, trying to keep herself from snapping. Olivia, oblivious as always, laughed like this was just another family get-together. "I know it's sudden, but honestly, this is the best solution for everyone." Emma narrowed her eyes. "For everyone?" Olivia waved a dismissive hand. "Well, obviously I need some time to figure things out. The divorce has been exhausting." She sighed dramatically, shaking her head. "You have no idea how hard it's been, Emma. It's just been one thing after another. The stress, the legal stuff, the money, it's all so much. And she placed a hand on her chest as if she were the victim of some tragic injustice. "I just can't do this alone." Emma's voice was eerily calm. "So your solution is dumping your kids on me?" Olivia scoffed. "Oh, come on. It's not like that. They're family, Emma. I thought you'd be happy to help." Happy to help. Emma felt something inside her snap. For years, she had been the forgotten child. The one forced to be responsible while Olivia made one reckless decision after another. The one left behind while Olivia was bailed out of every mistake, every bad choice, every disaster of her own making. And now, after all these years, after stealing from her, abandoning her, pretending she didn't exist, Olivia was back. And she expected Emma to pick up the pieces. Again. No. It was one word, spoken simply, but the weight of it filled the entire room. Olivia blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "What?" Emma lifted her chin, her voice cold and unwavering. "I said no. I'm not taking them in." The air shifted. Her mother's face twitched in disapproval. Her father let out a deep sigh like Emma was the one being difficult, but Olivia? Olivia looked outright offended. "You're seriously saying no?" she demanded, crossing her arms. "Emma, they're my kids. They need a stable home right now." Emma let out a humorless laugh. "Then be a mother and give them one." Olivia gasped, as if Emma had physically struck her. "I am a mother. But I need help." Emma shook her head. "No. What you need is another handout. Another safety net. Another person to clean up your mess so you don't have to deal with the consequences." Olivia's face twisted. "Wow. You really are selfish?" Emma felt Ethan tense beside her, but she wasn't done. "Selfish?" she repeated, her voice sharper now. "You stole from me. You let Mom and Dad take my future so you could have your fairytale weddings. And now you think I owe you more?" Olivia rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, get over it. That was years ago, Emma. Are you really going to hold a grudge over money?" Emma inhaled sharply. "It wasn't just money. It was everything. And you knew it." Olivia threw up her hands. "You know what? Fine. Be like this. But I hope you can live with yourself knowing you turned your back on family." Emma didn't even hesitate. "Like you did to me?" Silence. For the first time, Olivia faltered. For the first time, she had no quick comeback, no snide remark. But it didn't last. "Unbelievable," Olivia muttered under her breath, shaking her head. Then, as if deciding she was done with the conversation, she turned to her kids and crouched down. "Come on, sweethearts. Looks like Aunt Emma doesn't love us enough to help." Emma's stomach twisted in disgust. The manipulation. The guilt-tripping. The way Olivia immediately tried to twist the situation to make her the villain. The little girl, Emma barely knew her name, looked up at her with wide, confused eyes. "Why don't you want us, Aunt Emma?" Emma's heart clenched. Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm. "This isn't about them." But Olivia just shook her head, taking their hands and pulling them toward the door. "Let's go," she muttered, casting one last glare at Emma. "Enjoy your perfect little life, Emma. Must be nice to have everything and still be this heartless." Emma didn't stop her. She didn't say another word as Olivia stomped out the door, dragging her kids along, leaving behind the cold silence of her entitled rage. And for the first time in years, Emma didn't feel guilty. She felt free. The first time Olivia showed up uninvited, Emma thought it was just another desperate attempt to guilt her into taking the kids. She opened the door one evening after work to find Olivia standing there, the two children clinging to her coat, looking tired and confused. "Come on, Emma," Olivia had sighed, stepping past her before she could protest. "They just wanted to see their favorite aunt." Emma had clenched her jaw, glancing over at Ethan, who was standing stiffly in the kitchen, clearly as displeased as she was. Olivia had made herself comfortable on the couch, stretching out like she belonged there, while the kids sat awkwardly on the floor. Emma could have let it slide once, but then it happened again. And again. Each time, Olivia found some excuse to show up. Oh, the kids missed you, or I was in the neighborhood, or the classic, I just needed a break. Emma started locking the doors, pretending not to be home. But Olivia always found a way, showing up at Ethan's office or waiting outside their house until one of the neighbors let her in. It was suffocating. Then, one afternoon, Emma came home from work and found her neighbor, Mrs. Calloway, waiting on her front porch. You need to know something, the older woman said, hesitating. It's about your sister. Emma's stomach dropped. What about her? Mrs. Calloway sighed, lowering her voice. She's been coming by when you're not home. At first, I thought she was just dropping off the kids, but lately, she hesitated. Lately, she's been coming alone. And she's not exactly dressed like a woman who's just visiting her sister's house. Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. She stays for hours, Mrs. Calloway continued. Only when your husband is home alone. I didn't want to assume anything, but, well, I thought you should know. Emma thanked her, then went inside, her head spinning. Ethan was already home, working in his office, completely unaware of the storm brewing in Emma's mind. She took a steadying breath before stepping inside. How long has Olivia been doing this? She asked, voice sharp. Ethan looked up, startled. Doing what? Emma crossed her arms. Coming over when I'm not home. Dressing up for you. Staying for hours. Ethan's face darkened. He exhaled through his nose and rubbed a hand over his face. I was going to tell you. Emma felt her stomach tighten. Tell me what? Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. She's been inappropriate. Emma's heart pounded. How inappropriate? She pressed. Ethan hesitated, then sighed. She flirts. A lot. Touches my arm, laughs too much, makes comments. He met Emma's gaze. She's been pushing boundaries. Emma swallowed back the rage building in her chest. What kind of comments? Ethan hesitated, then looked her dead in the eye. If you ever get tired of the boring version, he said, voice flat, you could always upgrade to the fun sister. Emma felt like she had been slapped. Her hands trembled, her vision blurred at the edges, but Ethan reached for her before she could spiral into blind fury. I shut it down, he said firmly. Every single time. I've never given her an inch. Emma clenched her jaw, trying to stay calm, but it was impossible. Olivia. Her own sister. This wasn't just about Olivia being selfish or reckless. This was deliberate. Calculated. Emma had taken away Olivia's safety net, and now Olivia was trying to take her life instead. Emma wasted no time. She drove straight to Olivia's rundown apartment, barely containing her fury as she knocked on the door. Olivia answered, looking surprised for half a second before smirking. Wow, she drawled. Didn't expect you to come running to see me. What's the occasion? Emma pushed past her, slamming the door shut behind her. Olivia only laughed, strolling lazily to the couch, as if Emma had shown up to chat about the weather. You really have no shame, do you? Emma seethed. Olivia sighed dramatically, leaning back. Oh, this should be good. You've been throwing yourself at my husband. Olivia's smirk widened. Oh, come on, Emma. You can't blame me for wanting what's better. Emma's fingers curled into fists. He told me everything. Olivia waved a hand. And? I was just joking. Joking? Emma nearly laughed in disbelief. You think it's funny to come into my house, flirt with my husband, and act like I'm the backup version of you? Olivia only grinned. Well, you are kind of boring. Emma inhaled sharply. You're disgusting. Olivia rolled her eyes. Oh, relax. You act like I actually did something. She leaned forward, eyes glinting. But if Ethan ever changes his mind, well, she shrugged. He knows where to find me. Emma saw red. She had spent her entire life being second to Olivia. The forgotten daughter. The overlooked sister. The one who worked twice as hard for half the attention. But this? This was war. Emma stormed out, her pulse pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. But it wasn't over. The next morning, the phone rang. She didn't want to answer, but something told her she should. It was her mother. Emma, we need to talk, her mother said, her voice sharp with irritation. Emma exhaled slowly. About what? Her mother huffed. About Olivia. She told me everything. You humiliated her in her own home. Emma's lips curled. Good. Emma, her mother snapped. She's stressed. She's been through so much. And instead of supporting her, you're accusing her of something so ridiculous. Emma let out a slow, humorless laugh. Ridiculous? She told my husband to upgrade to the fun sister. Silence. Then, her mother scoffed. She was joking. You know how Olivia is. You're just overreacting like you always do. Emma felt her grip on the phone tighten. Like I always do? Yes, her mother said impatiently. You've always been so sensitive. So dramatic. Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. She came into my house, disrespected my marriage, and I'm the dramatic one? She's going through a divorce, her mother shot back. She's lonely. Maybe if you weren't so cold-hearted, you'd understand that. Emma's chest burned with fury. You're unbelievable, she whispered. You owe her, her mother snapped. After everything she's been through, you owe your sister some compassion. That was it. The last straw. Emma took a slow breath. I don't owe her anything. And then she hung up. For the first time in her life, she wasn't second place. She was done. The doorbell rang. Again. And again. And again. A shrill, unrelenting sound that dragged Emma out of sleep with a sick sense of dread curling in her stomach. She sat up, disoriented, the early morning darkness pressing against the windows. Beside her, Ethan groaned, already reaching for his phone to check the time. Who the hell is ringing the doorbell at? He squinted. 5 in the morning? Emma didn't answer. She already knew. She threw back the blankets, heart pounding as she rushed to the front door. The ringing continued, insistent, frantic, like a warning. And then she opened it. Liam and Ava stood there, shivering, barefoot, dressed in thin pajamas despite the biting winter air. Their small bodies trembled violently, their lips tinged blue. Liam clutched Ava's hand, his other arm wrapped protectively around her as he blinked up at Emma, exhausted and confused. Emma's stomach plummeted. And then she saw the note. A crumpled piece of paper tucked under the doormat. The moment her eyes landed on the scrawled, careless handwriting, she felt bile rise in her throat. They're your problem now. I need to live my life. Emma couldn't breathe. Jesus Christ, Ethan muttered behind her, his voice thick with disbelief as he pulled the kids inside. Emma slammed the door shut, her hands shaking. Ava whimpered, pressing her face into Liam's side. How long have you been out there? Ethan asked urgently, kneeling down in front of them. Liam hesitated, glancing at Ava before whispering, a long time? Emma's vision blurred with fury. She left them. She actually left them. Ethan didn't waste a second. He pulled out his phone and dialed. CPS and the police, he said firmly. We document everything? Emma nodded, already heading toward the hall closet for blankets. Liam and Ava were stiff as she wrapped them up, their small bodies still frozen from standing outside for God knows how long. The realization made her sick. Olivia hadn't even cared enough to drop them off at a reasonable hour. She had dumped them in the dead of night like garbage. The rage that burned inside Emma was unlike anything she had ever felt before. By the time the police arrived, Ethan had gathered all the evidence. Security footage of Olivia driving up and leaving them, the note, the lack of any packed clothes or supplies. CPS arrived moments later, their expressions darkening as they took in the scene. This isn't the first time, the caseworker admitted grimly as she looked through Olivia's file. She's been reported before for abandoning them with random people, while she lives her life. Emma's grip on the blanket tightened. So she just dumps them whenever they're inconvenient? She said, her voice dangerously low. The caseworker sighed. We've had complaints, but never with this level of proof. She usually spins the story, says it was just a miscommunication or that she was overwhelmed. But this? She gestured at the security footage on Ethan's laptop, where Olivia could clearly be seen driving off, barely looking back. This is neglect. And now we have undeniable evidence. Emma swallowed, looking down at Liam and Ava. They sat curled together on the couch, clutching their blankets like lifelines. They were innocent in all of this. And Olivia hadn't just failed them, she had thrown them away. What's going to happen now? Ethan asked, his voice tight. The caseworker glanced at the kids before answering. We'll try to locate Olivia, but given her history, they may be placed into foster care unless there's a suitable family member willing to take them in. Emma felt all eyes turn to her. She inhaled sharply. She knew what her parents would say. That it was her duty, that she should step up, that she owed it to Olivia's kids to fix this. But she didn't owe Olivia anything. And yet, she looked at Liam and Ava again, at how small they seemed, how lost they looked. They hadn't asked for this. They hadn't asked for her as a guardian, just like she had never asked to be the family's backup plan. Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. It was the only thing keeping her grounded. Emma swallowed hard, closing her eyes for just a moment. And when she opened them, she knew what she had to do. It didn't take long for the police to track Olivia down. She was in Las Vegas, living out some ridiculous fantasy of wealth and freedom while her children sat abandoned in the cold. She hadn't even bothered to hide. The police found her at a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, shacked up with some guy she had met online, draining what little money she had left on casinos, bars, and meaningless luxuries. She was laughing when they arrived, drinking, acting like she had the whole world at her feet. And then they arrested her. The charges hit her fast: child abandonment, neglect, endangerment. The evidence was undeniable. The security footage, the note, the police reports from past incidents. Olivia couldn't charm her way out of this one. Emma received the call 2 days later. Olivia's in custody, the officer informed her. She won't be getting out anytime soon. For the first time in her life, Emma felt nothing for her sister. No pity. No anger. Just emptiness. Olivia had done this to herself. The trial was swift. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a struggling single mother who had simply been overwhelmed, but the prosecution tore through the lie. They showed the court her spending records, the trips, the string of men she had met online, the evidence of her reckless, selfish choices. The judge saw right through her, and when the sentence came down, 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, Olivia's face finally showed something Emma had never seen before: fear. She wasn't in control anymore. And she never would be again. The question of Liam and Ava's custody came next. Emma and Ethan had been willing to step in temporarily, to ensure the kids weren't placed with strangers, but CPS had another plan. Their parents. Emma knew exactly why her parents suddenly decided to fight for custody. It wasn't out of love. It wasn't out of guilt. It was because the alternative, letting the world see that their golden daughter had failed so spectacularly, was unbearable. They couldn't let the family name be tarnished. So they played the role of concerned grandparents, pretending they were the best option for Liam and Ava, making empty promises about how they would give them everything they needed. Emma didn't believe a word of it. She had grown up in that house. She knew how they operated. And if there was one thing she was certain of, it was this: her parents would never truly love those kids the way they deserved. She and Ethan made sure of one thing: they stayed involved. They visited, checked in constantly, made sure Liam and Ava were actually being cared for. They didn't trust her parents to do the right thing unless someone was watching. And at first, Emma's mother tried to push her away. "You've done enough," she sniffed one evening when Emma stopped by unannounced. "We'll handle it." Emma had laughed bitterly. "Like you handled Olivia?" Her mother had gone pale. Emma didn't let her recover. "Let me be clear," she said, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "You don't get to decide when I stop caring about these kids. If I ever hear that you're treating them like an inconvenience, I will take action. And you know I have the resources to do it." She left her mother speechless. From that point on, Emma and Ethan made sure Liam and Ava had everything: school supplies, clothes, doctor's visits, love. They weren't going to let those kids be forgotten. They were innocent in all of this, and Emma would make sure they never had to feel the way she once did. Olivia tried reaching out from prison, first through letters, then through their parents. "She wants to talk to you," her father said one evening, his voice tired, like he was already expecting Emma's answer. Emma stared at him for a long moment before responding. "I don't care." Her father sighed. "Emma, she's nothing to me." Her mother flinched. "Emma, don't say that." "Why not?" Emma tilted her head. "Because it makes you uncomfortable? Because you don't want to admit that Olivia is exactly who you raised her to be." Her mother looked away. Emma didn't push further. She didn't need to. She had made her choice. And for the first time, they were the ones being left behind. Months passed. The storm settled. Olivia remained in prison. Emma and Ethan continued being a steady presence in Liam and Ava's lives. And slowly, they started to heal. But then, one morning, Emma woke up feeling strange. It wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't stress. It was something else entirely. She stared at the pregnancy test in her hands, her heart hammering in her chest. And when Ethan walked into the room and saw her standing there, wide-eyed and shaking, his brows furrowed in concern. "What's wrong?" he asked, stepping closer. Emma turned the test toward him. His eyes flickered down. His mouth parted slightly. And then, laughter. Pure, genuine laughter. Emma felt something crack inside her. Because this was hers. Not stolen. Not forced. Not given out of guilt. Hers. She let out a shaky breath as Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. For the first time, Emma wasn't second. She wasn't forgotten. She wasn't Olivia's shadow. She was free.